Have you ever heard of a family so cursed that every generation is doomed to repeat a cycle of betrayal, murder, and revenge? Today, we're diving deep into one of the most gripping tales from Greek mythology, the story of Orestes and the infamous House of Atreus. This isn't just a story of bloodshed. It's the story of how ancient humanity wrestled with the concepts of vengeance and justice, and how they created a system that would change the world forever. So grab your popcorn, because this family drama makes reality TV look like a walk in the park. Our story begins not with Orestes, but with his great-grandfather, Tantalus. Tantalus made a huge mistake. He tested the gods by serving them his own son, Pelops, for dinner. As you can imagine, the gods were not amused. They punished Tantalus for eternity and placed a terrible curse on his entire bloodline. This curse of betrayal and violence would haunt his family for generations to come. Fast forward to Orestes' father, Agamemnon, the great king of Mycenae and commander of the Greek forces in the Trojan War. Before sailing to Troy, Agamemnon angered the goddess Artemis. To appease her and get favorable winds for his fleet, he made a horrifying choice. He sacrificed his own daughter, Iphigenia. This act saved the Greek army, but it planted a seed of bitter hatred in the heart of his wife, Clytemnestra. For 10 long years, while Agamemnon was away fighting in Troy, Clytemnestra plotted her revenge. She took a lover, Aegisthus, who just so happened to be Agamemnon's cousin and a sworn enemy of the family. When Agamemnon finally returned home, a celebrated war hero, he wasn't met with a hero's welcome. Instead, Clytemnestra and Aegisthus sprang their trap. They murdered him in his own bath, a brutal and shocking end for the victorious king. This is where our hero, Orestes, enters the picture. At the time of his father's murder, Orestes was just a young boy. His loyal sister, Electra, fearing he would be next on the chopping block, smuggled him out of Mycenae and into hiding. Orestes grew up in exile, far from his home, but never forgetting what had happened. The ghost of his father and the duty to avenge him weighed heavily on his mind. He was caught in an impossible situation. The ancient laws demanded that a son avenge his father's murder, but the murderer was his own mother. To kill her would be matricide, one of the most heinous crimes imaginable. What was he to do? Seeking guidance, Orestes traveled to the Oracle of Delphi, the most sacred site in the ancient Greek world. He asked the god Apollo for advice. Apollo's command was clear and terrifying. You must kill your mother and her lover to avenge your father. The god promised to protect him from the consequences, but the act itself was still monstrous. Torn but resolute, Orestes understood his fate. He had to fulfill this divine command, no matter the cost. So, Orestes returned to Mycenae in disguise. With the help of his sister Electra, who had been living under the tyranny of their mother and Aegisthus, he planned his revenge. He gained access to the palace by pretending to be a messenger bringing news of his own death. This trickery allowed him to get close to Aegisthus first, striking him down. Then came the moment he had dreaded his entire life. He confronted his mother, Clytemnestra. She pleaded for her life, baring the breast that had nursed him as a baby. For a moment, Orestes hesitated, but the command of Apollo and the memory of his father were stronger. He steeled himself and killed his own mother, finally avenging Agamemnon. The act was done. Vengeance was served. But Orestes' ordeal was far from over. As soon as the blood was spilled, a new terror began. The Furies, also known as the Erinyes, ancient goddesses of vengeance, rose from the underworld. These terrifying beings were the enforcers of natural law, and their primary role was to punish those who killed their own kin. They were monstrous, with snakes for hair and eyes that wept blood, and they were relentless. They descended upon Orestes, driving him mad with guilt and torment. They pursued him across the land, giving him no rest, no peace. The divine protection Apollo had promised seemed to be failing. Orestes was a man on the run, haunted by literal demons. His desperate flight finally led him to Athens, to the sacred temple of the goddess Athena. He clung to her statue, begging for an end to his suffering. Apollo appeared to defend him, arguing that he had only acted on a divine command. The Furies, however, argued that their ancient law was absolute. A mother killer must be punished. The cycle of violence seemed destined to continue forever. But here, something extraordinary happens. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and strategy, decides not to solve this with divine power or more violence. Instead, she establishes something entirely new, a court of law. She gathers 12 Athenian citizens to act as a jury. This was to be the first ever murder trial. The goddess herself would preside as the judge. The Furies acted as the prosecution, passionately arguing for Orestes' guilt based on the sacred law against matricide. Apollo served as the defense, arguing that the duty to avenge a father, especially when commanded by a god, superseded all else. The arguments were powerful on both sides. The 12 moral jurors cast their votes. When the ballots were counted, it was a tie, 6 for acquittal, 6 for conviction. The fate of Orestes, and perhaps the future of humanity's approach to justice, hung in the balance. As the presiding judge, Athena cast the deciding vote. She voted to acquit Orestes. She reasoned that while the crime was horrific, the circumstances were complex. The old way of endless personal revenge and eye for an eye had to end. It was time for a new system based on reason, evidence, and impartial judgment. Orestes was finally free. The curse on the House of Atreus was broken. But what about the Furies? They were furious, their ancient honor and purpose denied. They threatened to plague the city of Athens with pestilence and infertility. But Athena, with her wisdom, did not destroy them. Instead, she offered them a new role. She persuaded them to transform from spirits of vengeance into benevolent guardians of the city, the Eumenides, or the kindly ones. They would no longer haunt individuals, but would instead ensure that justice was upheld for everyone within the city as new legal system. And so, the story of Orestes marks a pivotal moment in Western civilization. It's the mythical origin story of our legal system. It represents the transition from a world governed by blood feuds and personal vengeance to a society structured by law, trial by jury, and reasoned justice. Orestes' journey from a cursed son to a man acquitted by his peers is a powerful reminder that even from the darkest cycles of violence, humanity can forge a path toward a more enlightened and just future. What do you think? Was Orestes justified? Did Athena make the right choice? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this dive into Greek mythology, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories from the ancient world. See you next time.